Imagine Lucifer himself, the archenemy of God, leaving the throne of hell, only to claim a corpse. It was not just any body, it was the body of Moses. But why? What was so dangerous about the bones of a dead prophet? This story is hidden in a single verse of the New Testament. Few preachers talk about it. Almost no one understands what really happened. But in that lonely valley, where the earth fell silent and the sky held its breath, two eternal authorities faced each other, the angel Michael and Satan. Not with swords, but with words that sealed destinies. The dispute was so intense that God himself had to intervene. Stay with me until the end, because what you are about to discover may shake your view of death, legacy, and spiritual warfare. But before we begin, comment below. God guards my body and my soul. This simple comment can be a declaration of faith and a shield against what the enemy tries to claim. Moses did not die of old age. He did not get sick. He did not waste away like ordinary men. The Bible says that at 120 years old, his eyes still saw clearly and his strength had not diminished. He was not being consumed by death. He was being called by a voice that did not come from the earth, but from eternity. On top of Mount Nebo alone, before a horizon he would never touch, Moses heard from God. This is the land I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I have allowed you to see it with your eyes, but you will not enter it. It was there, among silent stones and ancient winds, that Moses said goodbye to the world. The man who faced Pharaoh, who parted the Red Sea with a gesture, who saw the face of God in fire and cloud, now waited in silence. There were no Levites to prepare his body. There were no songs, no ritual, no descendant. No man saw him die, no man buried him, because God himself buried Moses with his own hands. Deuteronomy 34:6 records, "And the Lord buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor, and no one knows to this day the place of his burial." This was not just a symbolic gesture, it was a divine declaration. The death of Moses was not the end of a life. It was the beginning of a mystery. God did not allow the place of his body to be known, not by chance, but for protection, because there was something in that body that heaven wanted to hide. Can you imagine that? The creator of the universe interrupting the natural course of death to hide the corpse of a man? This is more than honor. It is a sign that Moses, even in death, still carried a spiritual value that surpassed human understanding. God did not do this with Abraham, nor with Joseph, nor with Elijah. But with Moses, he himself dug the grave. Because that body could not fall into the wrong hands. The wind blew strong over Mount Pisgah. The valley below was calm, as if time had stopped. The sky, however, watched, and hell was preparing, because if God was hiding something, the enemy would soon try to expose it. Moses had finished his journey among men, but his story with the spiritual world was only beginning. Lucifer did not appear in that valley by chance. He descended to the sacred place where God buried Moses with a specific mission: to turn a holy symbol into an instrument of scandal. But why such interest in a dead body? Because Moses, even dead, was still dangerous to hell. Lucifer knew the impact a corrupted body could have. He had already seen in history how idolatry could be born from mismanaged memory. And what he wanted to do with the body of Moses was exactly that. Imagine what would have happened if the body had been found. Israel, which had already worshipped golden calves, could easily have turned the bones of Moses into a relic, an idol, a sanctuary. Satan knew. A corpse in the wrong hands can kill an entire generation spiritually. And more, Moses was not just a leader. He was the bearer of the law, the channel of the word, the face illuminated by the glory of God. Even in silence, his body carried traces of heaven. But there was something even deeper. Lucifer knew partially, like one who sees through shadows, that the body of Moses had a prophetic destiny. Moses would later appear with Elijah beside Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration. And if the body were corrupted before that, could the prophecy be broken? Would the divine plan be affected? For the devil, it was a chance to interrupt the future with a present act. And behind it all, an even older hatred. Moses symbolized the scandal of redemption, a man who failed but was accepted, who erred but was buried by God. That for the father of lies was intolerable, because if God still honors those who fail, hell loses its strongest weapon, accusation. That is why Lucifer came down in person, not to destroy, but to claim. And he thought he had the right. But what awaited him in that valley was an authority that even hell could not face. And what Michael did at that moment is what the devil fears most to this day. The valley was still, no sound, no witness. The body of Moses rested where only God knew, but the presence now approaching was not human. It was dark, majestic, cold as the abyss. Lucifer had arrived, not as a ghost, nor as a grotesque demon. He came as what he once was, a cherub of light now deformed by pride. His steps made no sound, but the air around him bent at his passing. Creation felt his presence and shrank back. He knew exactly where the body was. He did not guess. He did not search. He came straight to the point, as if that corpse had been marked, and hell smelled the scent of eternity. He did not come to destroy. He came to claim. As accuser, he presented himself as one who has the right. Moses failed, he could have said. Moses disobeyed. He did not enter the promised land. He belongs to death, and death belongs to me. But before he touched what God had sealed, a new presence descended. Not with noise, but with glory. Not with a shout, but with authority. Michael, the warrior archangel, had arrived. The Bible does not detail how he appeared. It does not describe his brightness, his garments, or his weapon. But the text of Jude 1:9 says that Michael did not bring accusations, did not argue, did not recite Moses' past. He released a sentence that silenced hell. The Lord rebuke you. Those 4 words were not just a warning. They were a decree from the throne, an eternal verdict. Lucifer did not back away because Michael was stronger. He backed away because he recognized the authority behind those words. Michael did not use a sword because the battle there was not physical, it was legal. It was not about strength, it was about right. And in that improvised heavenly court, Lucifer lost the case. He no longer had access. He no longer had an argument. There was no gap. The body he wanted to drag into idolatry, corrupt with mockery, display as a trophy of condemnation, was sealed by God himself. And no one can claim what heaven has already stamped with eternity. Lucifer disappeared as one expelled from forbidden territory. And Michael remained there, not only as a sentinel, but as guardian of something much greater than a body. Because what was in that valley was more than flesh and bone. It was a symbol, a key, a sacred element of God's eternal plan. God did not send Michael just to drive away the enemy. He sent Michael to protect something that had not yet been fulfilled. Because the body of Moses was not only the end of a story, it was the beginning of another, a prophetic story that would cross the centuries until it touched Christ himself. But after all, what was so powerful in that body that heaven would guard it and hell would covet it? The answer reveals one of the most astonishing secrets of spiritual warfare. And what comes next will surprise you. The question is inevitable. Why was the body of Moses so important? What was there that justified the descent of Lucifer and the direct intervention of Michael? The answer lies in three deep spiritual levels: legacy, glory, and prophecy. First, the body of Moses carried a divine legacy. He was not just a prophet, he was the mediator of the Old Covenant, the man who went up to Sinai and came down with the tablets of the law. His feet touched the ground of revelation. His hands held the commandments carved by God himself. If the devil managed to take that body, he could turn the law into an idol, the symbol of obedience into oppression. He could use the corpse of Moses as a religious weapon, creating a faith without intimacy, based only on rituals and dead memories. Second, the body of Moses had been marked by glory. The Bible says that his face shone after being in the presence of God, to the point of needing to wear a veil. That flesh had already carried traces of the divine presence. Lucifer, who is thirsty for power and a specialist in corruption, desired to profane what once had shone. He wanted to drag what had been touched by God into mockery, as he did with Eve, with Judas, with so many others, because corrupting something that once was holy is a bitter victory for hell. Third, and more shocking, the body of Moses had a prophetic destiny. Centuries later, he would appear with Elijah on the Mount of Transfiguration beside Jesus, speaking with the Messiah himself about the cross that was approaching. Moses would be there not as a spirit, but as a man, in glorified body. Lucifer knew this in part. He did not see clearly, but he perceived the prophetic patterns forming, and his desperate attempt was to sabotage the image of Christ alongside the law and the prophets. If he contaminated the body, perhaps he could affect the future scene. Perhaps he could obscure the link between the old and the new covenant. The body of Moses was not only an end, it was a prophetic bridge, a spiritual key that heaven preserved and that hell tried to break. But what does this war for a body teach us about our own life? And why are you, just like Moses, also the target of invisible disputes that you never saw happening? The battle between Michael and Lucifer was not only about Moses. It was about an eternal principle. When God claims something, not even hell can touch it without permission. And this does not apply only to ancient prophets. It applies to you. Because just like Moses, your life, your story, your identity also carry a calling that hell tries to silence. The truth is that the enemy does not always attack when you are at your peak. Many times, he waits for you to fall. He waits for you to give up. He waits for you to die emotionally or spiritually, to then appear with accusations. He tries to say that failures disqualify, that mistakes cancel promises, that failures bury legacy. But the story of Moses proves the opposite. He failed. Yes, he struck the rock, he doubted, he disobeyed. But even so, he was buried by God, and even so, he appeared in glory beside Christ. This battle teaches us that hell does not fight only for the present. It tries to steal your future, your spiritual inheritance, the impact your life can have even after you are gone. There are disputes happening right now over your mind, your family, your purpose, that you do not even see, but God sees. And if he sent the Archangel Michael to protect the body of a man, he also moves heaven to protect your story. You may not feel it, you may not see it, but if you belong to God, you are sealed. And the seal of heaven is like invisible fire. The enemy even tries to approach, but he cannot remain. To conclude, reflect. If even the body of Moses was the target of a spiritual battle between heaven and hell, what is the enemy trying to claim in your life right now? Which parts of your story is he trying to stain? Which failures does he insist on using against you? What does this silent war want to bury before God transforms it into testimony? Today, there are things the enemy tries to touch: your identity, your calling, your faith. But as Michael declared that day, "The Lord rebuke you." And that same decree echoes over you. It silences the accusation. It shuts the mouth of the accuser. It reminds hell that you already have an owner. And if this message spoke to you, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell. This helps spread spiritual truths like this to thousands of people. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that God still guards his own, even in death. And right here in the comments, "My legacy is in God's hands." This simple phrase can be the seed of a restoration that hell will never understand. For today, that is all, and may God bless you.